Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Higher Ed Live. I'm Ashley Budd, your veteran host and Director of Marketing Operations for the Advancement Wing of Cornell University. I'm excited to be back, and I want to tell you that Higher Ed Live offers direct access to the best and brightest minds in higher education and has for years and years allowed audience members to share knowledge and participate in discussions around the most important issues in the higher education industry. All the episodes are always free and can be accessed online at higheredlive.com, or you can take Higher Ed Live with you on the go by subscribing to the podcast wherever you listen. Higher Ed Live is now produced by Platform Q Education, the leading developer of online engagement software and strategies. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter, and you can get that on the website, higheredlive.com, or you can connect with us on social media using the hashtag HigherEdLive. For podcast listeners, head on over to higheredlive.com, and you're also going to see all of the episode notes. So that is the business. This week, Charlie Melikar and I are going to discuss the Advancement Playbook. And if you don't know Charlie, what's going on? What do you do these days? How do we intro Charlie Melikar of 2021?
Well, differently than Charlie Melikar of 2020. So earlier this year, I started my own consultancy, Melikar Consulting, doing a lot of the same kind of work that I've always done around strategic frameworking for philanthropy, primarily campaigns and engagement. Still doing consulting work with Martz and Lundy, hooked up with a group called Advance, and my friends over at Snavely and Overture. So just keeping my self-active with a lot of partners, working with Platform Q, and just really trying to re-engage with the entire industry in a way where it seems like we've got some opportunities, like we'll talk about today, to do some different stuff. So yeah. I've kind of got on my own to just get as much work under my belt as possible in terms of where advancement's going.
Yes. Can we start with structures?
Yeah. Can we start with structures?
I don't know. But I think the strategies we've definitely changed the way we're doing things. And I'm so curious to hear what your partners are changing and doing and what's working. But I went through a huge structure change, and I've seen it happening in advancement. I don't know how consistently, but last year we merged all the communication marketing professionals in our division under one team, and that is now serving both alumni engagement and participation level fundraising, and then up the chain too with some fun creative stuff like campaigns.
Yeah. I mean, so I'll start off with the kind of stuff you get to say when you're on your own is, my hot take at this point is that we're still to the point of the playbook. We're following an advancement playbook that was written in the 80s. Structure is not reflecting what's going on in the marketplace right now. We're built around program rather than engagement.
What did those structures look like? Why were they like that?
Well, you didn't have the level of digital capability, the level of business intelligence capacity. Just those two things, you didn't organize around them, right? So you're organizing around a much more people kind of modular based program, right? So you had to have a big, let's say it's a reunion program, or you had to have a volunteer management program. It was organizing pods of people and programs that were repeatable year after year.
Yep.
So what about that makes sense today? And I'm not saying blow the whole thing up, but are we driven by repeating and, slightly moving along the same program year over year? Or are we looking at what is the business intelligence? What our analytics tell us we should be doing? How do you quickly pivot a program towards that?
Yes.
I think those old structures they're built to do a thing and repeat the thing. If you're looking at a new structure, you actually don't want to do that. You don't want to hard code things because it doesn't set people up for success, which ultimately I think is what structure should be doing.
Right. And I just had some words that kind of made me shudder that I didn't want to say out loud, but things like flexibility and pivoting and all of the things that we both crave, flexibility and creativity and the absolute need to, but I don't want to go into that quite yet because I just kind of got like slammed back into 2021 and I wasn't ready to do that because we were in the 80s. So take this millennial
members
again,
only jackets
back to the 80s. And what you were saying about the big programs, what I was thinking was, how did we get the most people engaged in the 80s? How did we keep the most people possible connected then? And it was to have these big flagship programs that everyone wanted to come back for.
Yeah.
Right.
Because that was right for then, right? Like you didn't have all the digital engagement opportunities you have now.
Right. But so let's fast forward to social media.
Sure.
Internet, even blogging, maybe whenever, early 2000s. And even into the first decade of the 2000s, now we can reach everybody again, right?
But look at how, I'm not even thinking about your program. Look at how most programs are built.
Yeah.
Right?
Tell me, because I jumped into the program that I'm in, and I know it is a unicorn program. So
we've looked at, if you just look at the structure, right? The structure would typically tell you that the primary engagement opportunities are reunion, because there's usually a reunion structure.
Yeah.
And they're all kind of the signature programs. And then there's this sideshow of digital and social media that we might have it's like 8 people's part-time job, and there's a digital engagement officer. We've seen, to your point of we're 20 years into this, and it's still, we're going to do this program. And this is where engagement, like a couple thousand people showing up, that's engagement. 35,000 people per year engaging with us digitally and virtually.
Right.
That's great too. Judy handles that from her office. That's a closet at the end of the hall. I mean, I'm making it kind of, I'm going overboard here, but the structure hasn't followed engagement. We're not listening to our audience, and that is actually engagement. It's not, we're going to build this thing, we want you to come with it, and when you do, we'll say you're engaged. It's, how do you want to engage?
Right.
I think overall people are saying, I want to do that thing, but we've not built structures to follow.
Now you're making me feel better about where I am in 2021, because when I joined Cornell in 2013, I was the 3rd full-time person doing social media strategy.
Yeah.
That still doesn't exist centrally at any universities.
Yeah.
And we did break that apart. We no longer have 3 full-time people just figuring out social. But we needed the investment then to figure out, like, we knew this digital engagement space is something that needed to be figured out. And so now I'm feeling really encouraged about the way our structure has been put together, a communications expertise, marketing expertise, and people thinking about participation, both on the engagement side and on the annual giving side.
And that's what I mean. I've always admired your program for all the reasons you just said, is that it wasn't that the industry was saying, well, this is what you need to build now. And it wasn't saying, well, okay, we know, so we're going to hire into and all that. It was, our community seems to want this, and it seems to have some potential. Let's build something.
Yeah.
And even all these years later, that's not happening. And we have like much tighter constraints on resources. And instead of saying, okay, how do we reshape those resources and invest in digital, invest in business intelligence analytics? It's that's getting cut sometimes.
Right.
I mean, the thing that's taking hold is, we've got to cut back on that. Like,
Right.
this is where it's going to go, or it's already there. And it's one of the ironies of this, the obsession with engagement. It's all about engagement, and people use it. It's a great, very fun, warm word to say, but it's really hard to do. And it requires investment, humility, listening more than you talk, all those things. And most programs haven't moved towards a truly them-focused engagement model. I mean, let's get under the covers with it a little bit. Engagement is code for acquisition. The conversation quickly moves from, okay, you've engaged all these people, which ones are my donors? That's there, but I don't, if you're trying to engage me, I don't want to know that you're doing all this really just so that you can acquire me and upgrade me and renew me. I probably will do that.
Yeah.
But I want you to engage me because you want to be engaged with me, right? Like I want to be a part of what you're building, and sure, I'll invest in it. So I think there's tremendous opportunity in why, I mean, even the title of this episode about the playbook, one of the things I've been saying to people this year is, last year, you had to throw the playbook in the fire, right? Yeah. So this year, your job is to not jump in the fire and try to get it out. Like, leave it, let it burn, right? And do all the things that you were forced to do creatively last year in a much less awful environment, right? But tremendous good came out of some of that creative space, letting go of stuff. All the sacred cows were, not so sacred anymore. So that was it, and figure out, okay, what did we learn? What did we do? We were all digital. Yeah. What good came from that? So
some good
did come. I mean, think about it. I don't know that I've talked to a place that hasn't told a story about people coming from out of the woodwork. It's because you offered something that they could do on their terms.
Exactly. Yeah. And we had a real benefit of being ahead on that.
For sure.
And having offered a virtual version of our reunions for as long as I worked at Cornell.
Yeah.
So over 8 years we were streaming already.
Yeah.
And understanding that, okay, so back in the 80s, we've got our big reunion program that would bring in thousands of people. And now, if we're putting the same effort, no, if we were putting much less effort, but if we're refocusing that effort into online programs that can reach even more people. That engagement number, that acquisition number, can count up a lot quicker. And what are the other things that we have access to now to count people's engagement and their touches with the university? In the 80s, we didn't have email. So we are now counting, we are now able to measure how much people are really paying attention to what we're saying, because you don't have to show up at an event to know what's going on or to feel like you're connected with the community. And even our most recent leadership that we've been hiring now in this new era, we'll look at their resume and we'll see, oh, you haven't really been engaged according to us.
That's interesting.
And they're like, I am here ready to serve. I'm ready to change my career, and because I feel so connected. And I think now that we can measure how long people are reading our stories and all this kind of stuff that was really passive and not measurable. We can see how many more people we actually do have in that acquisition phase.
And that's so great, right? I mean, I think, and that's the thing. I mean, to me, analytics and business intelligence it's just listening, right? It's listening to what resonates with people, where they show up. And then I think one of the challenges, and this is a resource thing. I mean, that requires doing those things properly, requires a level of expertise, right? You have to understand how to look at, how to ask good questions of the data. And then what is it telling you to do? Just follow the lead that people, when they show up, whether it's digitally or, you know, at an event, on a webinar or whatever it is, who showed up, kind of why, can you kind of guess? And then how do you build programs to follow? And again, that goes back to the org thing. Is if your organization drives program, you're not going to be able to do that as quickly and as well, because when the organization is built to drive program, it's just going to keep driving the program, and it's simply going to tweak it, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to do what you did last year and maybe add a couple new elements, where when the crowd says we want that, who's going to do that, right? Yeah. When you're more focused on behavior, you're more focused on actual engagement and listening, you know, that becomes, okay, we need to move the program towards that. I think the area where it's easiest to get into it is around just communication shaping over events, rather than kind of working a communications calendar. If you're working towards a set of milestones over the course of the year, well, then you just kind of track your milestones and you change your in quarter, in month, whatever strategy to kind of run towards opportunity and away from the stuff that doesn't work. Again, that requires the business intelligence, a sense of kind of how to move it, and a fairly lightweight set of approvals, which is another thing that higher education tends to struggle with, is, you know, empowering people who are at the point of kind of engagement to just kind of follow the trends, follow what's going on, and take some risks.
One of the things we really had an opportunity to change in this last year, when we were doing everything digital, we communicated more, because we had less regional offers and more offers available to everyone.
That's awesome.
Right? Like, just by nature of not having anything in person, mm-hmm. We had more things going on that were available to more people. So we had more communication. And we also, because we had a new team, that right structure of people, the same people that are writing all mm-hmm. of the reunion emails are writing all of the end of fiscal year solicitations.
Which is so great. Yeah, that's so great.
It's coming from the same place. It actually is. And we can continue a conversation that we started with a lot of excitement, and we can make the connections. It's great. It's a good move. I recommend it. But when you said trends, one of the things that we have really changed our whole way of thinking is not trends is kind of part of it, but it's more relevance.
Yeah.
And part of that can be relevance tied to tradition, mm-hmm. And holiday seasons, and trying to go through a future time warp and sit with ourselves. And each quarter tried to put ourselves in the shoes of our audience in that next quarter. So how are people going to feel around the holiday season this year? And what kind of events do we need to create? Mm-hmm, what kind mm-hmm. of communication pieces? What kind of helpful resources? What are all the things that we need to create to get people to pay attention during the holidays? And if you can be helpful most of the time, if you're dropping a resource that's helpful, they tend to open the next thing too. So.
And that's I think that is so right, and the relevance is the right word. And what you've done is you've dropped a little bit of Cornell in the life they're living,
right? Rather
than saying, just screaming Cornell at them, like, you've got to pay attention to us because we own an important piece of your heart, and blah, 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 blah. It's, this is where you are right now, and there's a little bit of us in there. And there's, again, that goes back to it's relevance. And I think it's also, I use the word humility, and that might not be the right word, but it's a little bit of, because knowing how much of the conversation you need to be a part of, right? Rather than kind of, kicking the door of their front house in and screaming Cornell at them. It's, we're engaged in a long conversation with you, and there's a little bit of us that can fit in right here. And I think that feels right. There's so much noise in everyone's life, period. And this last year, I think places like yours and, you know, higher education across the board gave something to people mostly for free, and they needed that. And it was generous, and it was good, and it was different, and it worked. So no year should ever look like last year. It did again. But what was it? What was that magic? And I think each place is probably a little bit different, but we stopped just doing the same old stuff, and we were relevant, and we were generous, and we kind of made conversations for people. And I think also there was some, and again, you guys do this really well. The tone was a little less serious. Like it was serious enough, but there were some online offerings, some talks and everything. Some of them were kind of weighty. Some was just like, you need a little bit of this in your life right now.
Yeah.
And we could do that, right? You think about what campuses have. You have a lot of just really cool, quirky, fun, interesting stuff. Yeah. People like that.
People like that. People really like that. People like free things.
Yeah.
People love our digital downloads. We launched a back to school fundraiser this week for annual funds. And on Tuesday we're launching it today. But you're probably listening to this podcast in the future. So back when school was starting, we did a fundraiser, but we also, the same week, we sent out downloadable bullet journals.
Oh, fun.
All different really fun habit trackers and weekly planners.
Oh, that's
because
awesome.
It's back to school time. And what do you think about during back to school time? You need a new planner, right? So give you something. People love
Trapper Keepers. You need to do the Trapper Keepers.
Yeah. Links to the store, you know.
That's great.
Your kids are getting back to school clothes. Why not give them a Cornell shirt to go back with, right?
That's
like
awesome.
Meet them. That's the relevance part of it that I think really keeps our open rates are bananas.
Yeah.
Our click-through rates are wild because we spend the time to try to put ourselves in that.
Well, and you're also looking at your data, right? Like, so you're probably over time doing less stuff that doesn't work.
Such a competitive space. Who likes email? No one.
No one. Right.
And if you think about the emails that you're willing to open, there's something to that. There's value inside there. And if you're not giving people stuff, if you're not serving them with valuable stuff while you're also asking them for so much, then they're not going to open that.
Yeah.
They're not opening that.
Yeah.
Who's got time for that?
Right. Nobody.
No.
Nobody. No. Yeah. Yeah.
What else is different in this? Well, we don't know what the new playbook is, right?
No. And I think that's one of my other catchphrases lately has been, we're in the middle of the beginning. So give yourself some grace, right? Like where you don't know you're at the beginning of something until like 3 or 5 years in. Like, oh yeah, that was the beginning. This is the beginning of something. We're just so caught up in the very early phases of it that it's hard to point to it. So you can feel on certain places this year and the past couple months have made it a little harder. But okay, now we can go back to doing that. Or even if they know that they don't want to do it that way, people seek some sense of kind of normalcy and comfort and all that. So trying to kind of go back to the way some programs were built, or go back to the way we delivered some offerings and everything. And I think the big opportunity here is to create space to just live in, I don't know, right? To live in, this is the beginning of something different. The platforms aren't quite there yet. The practices aren't there yet. There's no conference I could go to. It tells me all the things that I should do, and because that's part of our lives. I think this is a time to just think really creatively, break some stuff, and look at how we can just be in the moment, be relevant and all that, because I'm convinced this is the beginning of a new era for engagement, for advancement, for fundraising, but it's super early, super, super early. So all the stuff has to catch up. Like it's clicking in. And again, places like yours, tend to be ahead of the curve. So you've got more muscle memory than other places might have, but everybody got a little stronger last year. So it goes to, you even mentioned a couple of these things. How do you hire? How do you train? How do you bring people on board when there isn't yet a playbook? And I think that's hard, but I'm convinced that that's the real opportunity, is to kind of just live in that space for a little bit of we're writing it, together. And that's one of the reasons I'm trying to just get into as many conversations as I can is, where are those innovations? Where are those risks? Where are the places that are kind of doing something really cool that's pretty different, that seems to work? And I really think this is just going to be an incredibly creative, productive era that we're kind of starting off on. Plus, it's much more fun to think that way than...
Yeah, please. We need to think that way.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it is. We're still in that, what I feel like is the no man's land of, and I appreciate you saying just live in it while we're figuring this out. But we have learned a lot this year. We've learned that you can engage people digitally. I think we had a very captive audience, so that hopefully will not exist, that level of captivity. And we might see that this was like a really big bump for digital. We pulled so many, we pulled people into digital from so many different pockets that there weren't already. That is one thing that I observed, having been on a team that's been serving this kind of content prior to COVID. We didn't always see it with the oldest demographic. We didn't always see it with the youngest demographic. We didn't always see it with parents. And yes, we designed some content that worked, but that kind of universal Cornell rah-rah stuff that everyone gets down with, we saw more of these pockets of different audiences that
it's because, that
got kind of pushed over the edge of, you got to try, like,
you've got to try, but also they probably did their podiatrist visit on Zoom, right? Because everyone had to figure it out.
You had to figure it out.
So it all of a sudden, all of that, the rest of society having to do everything by Zoom helped, right? So everybody's capacity went up. So I think that's actually one of the other things about this middle of the beginning thing is, all right, the bar is higher now. You have more people who can do this. So your production value has to go up. Your offering has to be better. Zoom probably isn't the answer. This is a much better platform for engagement. So it's recognizing, all right, we've hit a new baseline for digital engagement with society, not just kind of with our audiences or as an institution. What's that next level? We can't assume that anymore. And we can't accept the argument that, well, we've got a lot of people who just don't do that. I promise you, everybody's had to at least experiment with it this year.
Yeah.
So
and
where are you
the
going to go?
expectation is different. And I have had some constituents over the years with had an online expectation or couldn't travel.
Yeah.
And that expectation is going to be there. And your VIP audience, if they don't want to be there, they know the technology exists to put them in the room now.
Yeah.
And to go back to planning any in-person event without thinking about the VIP who wants to participate online, do that first.
Yeah.
It is so much easier to have the online plan laid out first and then put together the in-person plan.
I think that's so smart. That's so smart.
Than it is to try to design it for the in-person audience and then try to put an online person in the middle of that room.
I think that is
impossible.
Brilliant and should be shouted from the rooftops, because the opposite is mostly what's happening, right?
That's what we know how to do is the in-person.
And it's not a great experience.
And we don't know how to do hybrid. This is something you have to figure out. But I can tell you that starting to designing the online experience first will help you select the right venues, will help you make sure you have the right lighting and sound for that
Mm-hmm.
VIP. Just if you put the trust board, the chairman of the board in your head and they cannot make it to this event, and you want
Mm-hmm.
to be able to deliver an experience, and it won't just be for that one person. You will
Mm-hmm.
have a large audience for most of your signature stuff. And there's going to be that expectation there that there's something. You don't have to
That's
do
so
everything
smart.
online, but design what you think would be the right level of value to deliver online. And then the in-person stuff,
You can figure that out.
that's especially now, you
Yeah.
don't have to do much to please an in-person audience. Your people coming back to campus now after probably at
Mm-hmm.
least a year, if not 2, 3,
They're
5
happy to
years.
be there. Yeah.
They just being there, like, you don't need to dress it up.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that is absolutely brilliant, and everybody should hear what you just said. And that also, to me, goes back to the structure thing is, okay, we're mostly built to deliver in-person, high production value, high dollar, live, non-virtual events. It's rare that will be the only offering going forward. So how have we staffed up to do exactly what you just said? What resources do we have? What talent do we have? Probably it's an imbalance of, when compared against delivering what used to be, right? And everybody sees it. And I completely agree on the hybrid thing. Hybrid is another one of the words, kind of like engagement, that I'm highly skeptical of, because to me, hybrid means two things that on their own could be excellent that have become one mediocre thing. Right? Like it's
Could be, yeah, or that it's two
dissatisfying.
different things and it's not one event. It's like, it's this, I don't know if this analogy will land with everyone, but it will land with my high ed web audience and probably some higher ed live listeners, that this is so similar to going mobile first.
Yeah, right.
Right.
That's great.
Like, if you design for that experience, you design for that group first,
Mm-hmm.
the rest will come together.
That's right.
It's so much that same mentality.
That's great. I totally agree. That's great.
It doesn't land with everyone. You got to think, like, I used to have a really good analogy about social media and radio that I could like take around to everyone. The mobile first thing.
Yeah.
It feels really similar to that, but that only had implications for dev teams.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't have implications for whole engagement structures.
Well, but it's also a UX thing, right? Of thinking, like having a UX mindset.
Yeah, an experience mindset. Yeah.
But that to me, all of this stuff, exactly like this part of the conversation in particular, is what everyone needs to get excited about, right? Because it's raw. It's okay. I'm tasked, no matter what my role is in advancement, to somehow evolve relationships with people.
Yeah.
So what are those opportunities? How are we relevant? How do we create a great experience? How do we create delight? How do we listen? How do we know all that stuff? I think it in some ways it's easier because it's just about people, right? Like it's not about what system do I need to know and what process do I need to follow and what book do I need? I don't know. How do you relate to people? How do you do that? And then get people around the organization to just think really creatively and give them the space to create stuff that might not work.
Right.
And I think, again, that was one of, we got more permission last year to do that because nothing was working, right? The whole thing stopped. So yeah, do anything, do literally anything and see what happens. And cool stuff happened. Right. Yeah.
Lots of good stuff happened.
Yeah. So I'm super optimistic and hopeful and excited about all of where this is going. We just have to be in this moment.
Thank you. Charlie, where can people reach you?
I am at Mela Charlie. So MELICHARLIE, pretty much everywhere. So that's me on Twitter. That's it's me on Facebook. That's me on LinkedIn. And for those who do use email, I'm also charlie@melacouncil.com.
Awesome. Thank you for the time and good conversation.
So much fun to talk to you.
optimism.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and thank you for everyone who tuned in all the way to the end of this episode. We appreciate you being with us, and thank you to Platform Q Education for making Higher Ed Live happen and bringing it back.
Woo!
Ooh.
Love it.
All right.